Well, so many people are trying to do the perceived right thing altruistically, and they're just driven down as some form of nuisance, some demon that is masquerading as something other than they really are, when it's the real demons that masquerade as something other than what they really are, and they're elevated to the status of hero in our society. That's really bothered me. It's that perversion, the inversion. And who better to talk about this subject with than Jordan Maxwell? Jordan Maxwell is on the line with us. You can find his information at jordanmaxwellshow.com and jordanmaxwellresearch.is. I'm sure he'll tell you all about that. I have no notes for this show, but Jordan, welcome to the Secret Teachings. Take us in any direction that you would like to go.
Well, thank you, Ryan, for inviting me back. Always a pleasure to be on the show with you. And there's so many things going on today that have ancient beginnings, and I think that this is where I have always been more interested in, is not what's necessarily going on today, as much as tracing back into ancient history where things have come from and why we are still doing today what humans were doing many thousands of years ago, and we still haven't figured it out yet, what we're doing and why we're doing it. So there's a lot we can talk about in relation to theology, religions, governmental structures, etc. I don't know if you have any ideas about where you would like to go with the conversation, or we'll just turn it loose and see where it goes.
Let's do a little bit of both. What you just mentioned there, you say you go back into the ancient world. If we understand some of those elements, some of those symbols, literally and figuratively, from the ancient world, it helps us to understand how things operate today, I believe. So it does relate to the modern day and what is happening today as much as it does to 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, and I think an interesting point I'd like to start off with is that, and I've said this before, but it bears witness to be said again, that if you have, it's just an example, but if you have a 2-story building and you're going to put a lot of weight on the second floor, like printing presses or automobiles or whatever, smart thing to do is to go downstairs and remove the ceiling tiles and look at the foundation of that floor that you're going to put all that weight on, to see if it's going to hold up to that kind of weight. And so what you're doing is you're standing under the foundation you're going to build on. And this is where we get our word understanding, because you're standing under the foundation. So the idea being is that if you really want to understand what's going on today, you have to go back to its foundations. And that obviously implies you've got to go back to the beginning of all of these horrors and sorrows that we're going through. Where did they start? I mean, how did they begin? And the ideas of religion that we have, the concepts and belief systems that are existing today, everybody is totally into, that are into that kind of thing, but nobody seems to have ever questioned, where did it all come from? And we don't mind setting up wars to destroy and kill and murder all over the world based on religions, but nobody's ever, bothered to ask the question, where did these religions come from? And what is the basis for these teachings in the different philosophies and religions of the world? And so when you get into looking at the background of our belief systems in the Western world, we're confronted with 3 major religions, basically Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. All 3 of those religions are based on fallacies. All 3 are totally based on fallacies. The Islamic religion is frightening to me. It's fearful, because it's loony, it's lunatics, lunatic teachings and incredibly interesting but silly beginnings if you go back into the history of Islam and go back into the history of the teachings. So that's the one story. Then Christianity is an overwhelmingly obvious relying on, the story of Christianity is obviously relying on a far, far more ancient story of which it was taken from in India and Egypt. But of the three, Judaism is from my point of view, the funniest one to deal with. There's so much humor can be brought into Judaism because it is a funny religion when you begin to look at the at the foundations of Jewish teachings in the what do we call it, the Old Testament. Christians call it the Old Testament. The Jews call it the Torah or the Law. But when you look into the actual beginnings of the teachings in the Old Testament, some of them are very, very interesting and very enlightening. But most of the belief systems of the Jewish religion are actually laughable when you begin to find out and research it and find out where these belief systems come from, and even more especially when you begin to see what they really mean. There's so much in the Old Testament Judaism that sounds very, very holy and very strict, and yet once you do the research into it and find out where these ideas came from, it's then becomes laughable, because first of all, the very history of the Old Testament is not only it used to be in question. Now it's not in question. We know where so much of the Old Testament came from. And how it was put together. Now, myself, I've only been looking at this for 58 years, so I'm not an expert on anything. But I've been looking at the subject for almost 60 years. And from my viewpoint, what I think has happened is I think Christianity came first, and then Judaism.
Christianity
I'm
as we know
totally
it as we know it today, or another form of Christianity?
Yeah, I know that is a good question. I just think that the original Christianity bears no resemblance to the Christianity of the first century. The original Christianity is so completely different than what we call Christianity today. It bears no semblance whatsoever. And but happily, and the nice part about it is that Christians are not aware of that. So therefore, everything works just fine, as long as they're not aware that nothing that Christians believe today was part of early Christianity, period.
Isn't that sort of the same thing with holy days or holidays? Don't have any idea about the origins or the symbols. Not that it's necessarily bad, but we just participate and give ourselves to things that we don't understand, mostly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We just give ourselves over to and take part in and participate in the celebration of certain events and certain times of the year, etc. Never really understanding where these beliefs came from, and I don't see it as evil at all. Christmas, I think, is a beautiful time of year, and Easter is also a beautiful time of the year. But you need to understand that. Well, first of all, it's interesting to realize that all over the world, governments of the world all have, and countries all over the world have holidays, have holy days. They're different, probably in most countries, but nonetheless, there are specific holidays for the people of different nations. One of the main reasons why that there are holidays is because of the ancient Egyptians and the counting of time in calendars. Because the ancient Sumerians, Babylonians, Phoenician, Canaanites, etc., especially the ancient Middle East, they kept time by 360-degree circles. So if you draw a circle and you put 360 dots equally arranged around that circle, that's 360 dots around a circle, we would then say that's 360 degrees or 360 days of the year. And this is why your watch is always around. It's around with the 12 numbers, 1 through 12, because the year is based on 12 months of the year, the 12 signs of the zodiac, and it's a round year, and there are 360 days in the calendar. But in point of fact, there's always been 360 days as we count by calendar days. But in point of fact, there are 365 days. And so you have to do something with those other 5 days. So most governments have decided to just make a holiday. And we don't even count that. We don't even look at it. Just keep it on a 360-degree circle or 360 days a year. And now it makes sense because, 1/4 of it is 90 and then another quarter. And then the 4 quarters come to 360. So 360 is a nice round number that the Babylonians, the Phoenician, Canaanites, and many of the ancient cultures of the world gave us. So that's where we come by understanding we have 360 days in the year.
And those houses of the zodiac, they're houses. They were built by the architect, the carpenter symbolism. Is that correct?
Yeah, and boy, when you get into the zodiac and that's a whole different subject, and we could talk for days on that.
What did you think of the so-called 13th zodiac, the Ophiuchus?
Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus.
Why was that implemented? Why was that granted some form of validity?
Well, I don't know exactly why it was, but I know that my friend who is really an expert on Nostradamus, and he is extremely accurate in his astrological readings, but he does it the way Nostradamus did it. And it's not actual astrology as we know it today, but he is very big on talking about the 13th constellation of how do we use that? What is it called again?
Ophiuchus.
Yeah, Ophiuchus. But he's always talking about that in relation to what Nostradamus was doing. So I know it must be important because everything he tells me comes to pass exactly when and the way he says it does. And so it's not regular astrology, but Ophiuchus is something that is very important, but I'm not really sure why. But anyway, getting back to the general idea of 365 days, but governments of the world and mathematicians and everybody else keeps track of time and calendar by 360 degrees. So what are you going to do with the other 5 degrees or the other 5 days? Well, you just make them into national holidays. This way we don't keep track of it. We don't even look at it, just holidays. They're holy. But that's another interesting point is connecting the word holy to holly.
Doesn't the Catholic Church sort of define time differently than the rest of the world?
Yes, they do. Yes, and it's goes back to church synagogue, church seminary teachings back in the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages, when the church, and that's a whole subject in itself, how the church came together and decided to change the counting of time, and that's a very interesting subject too. So, but I'm not really well knowledgeable on all of that. But I am aware that that did happen, and it does affect our calendars today. And my God, so much that happened back during the Middle Ages with the church making changes and making decisions for us. And, and when we're born into the world today, we just come in as babies and we don't know that we're even alive. And then eventually we begin to understand that we're alive and looking at the world. And then we begin to mock and copy our adults and thinking and reasoning. And before you know it, we are adults like everybody else, and we believe the same things and learn the same things and accepted the world, as it was presented to us, never realizing that, the children who are being born today are going to learn about computers and iPhones and all that kind of thing and artificial intelligence, but they're never, ever, ever going to know anything about freedom, liberty, justice, and the way America operated back in the 20s and the 30s and the 50s.
It's like they're taught that those types of things, Jordan, the latter, freedom, liberty, that those are perverse, and that we should accept the actual perversity as something that is otherwise sort of defined as liberty and freedom. As if we're told freedom is slavery. It's like 1984. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. War is peace.
Right. Yeah. You're right. That's crazy, but that's true. And but my point is that children being born today will never know what their grandparents lived in and how their grandparents lived. You will never know how your grandparents actually lived and their everyday routine of life and how they lived and how they fixed their food and how they transportation, etc. It's not very important. What's important is you to learn what you need to know to operate in the world you live in. But that being the case, well, let's go all the way back to the time of the ancient pharaohs of Egypt and see what kind of a world that they lived in and where they had come from. Who were the ancient Egyptians? They weren't Arabs. Today, I've been to Egypt 3 times, and many of the Arabic peoples there will tell you they are from a pharaonic line, meaning that they can trace their ancestry back to a pharaoh. Well, in point of fact, no, it's nice, but it's not true. Because there's a world of difference between the sun and the moon and up and down and Arabic and Egyptian. Egyptians is a totally different story than Arabic today. Arabs are not Egyptians. As a matter of fact, the very name Egypt is a Greek word that the people living in that land do not call themselves Egyptians or do not know of their country as Egypt. That's a Greek word. That country we call Egypt was originally called Chemi. And so it gives us our word chemical, Chemi. And then the belief systems that came out of ancient Egypt are dominating us today.
Is this like alchemy?
Yeah, like alchemy, and alchemy, and the country of Chemite.
Was that because
there was a priesthood in Egypt called the Chemite priesthood?
From what I understand, the priesthood essentially ran the Egyptian state. They had power over pharaohs, and the priestly class, whether you consider them white or black magicians, at least in the secret teachings in Memphis and places that were more dedicated to the preservation of the secret teachings, these people had a very, even to this day, advanced understanding perhaps of nature. And Egypt is a central hub for some of the greatest thinkers, philosophers, scientists, etc., who traveled to Egypt to learn what the Egyptians, or at least what some of the Egyptians, knew. What is it exactly about Egypt, then, that even to this day, is it just because, as you said, we're dominated by that today? What exactly is it about Egypt that made Egypt as a symbol, as a country, just so powerful, and it weighs so heavily as a symbol on the subconscious? Was there a significant reason for that?
Well, first of all, everything you just said about Egypt was absolutely correct. The priesthood were the powers. They were the powers behind the throne, so to speak. And just as it is today, we have people we call presidents and royalty in England, but the real power is hidden, and that nobody messes with. And so you're right that religion is actually the really powerful presence on earth behind governments. And so, and this is why lunatic people who are into religions can drive a whole nation into war. And the politicians running that country have to go along with whatever the priests are saying, whatever the heads of the religion are saying. They dare not go against them. And so, well, because of something even the Romans believed and the Romans taught in their law, the ancient Roman Empire, there was a maximum law that said the will of the people is the voice of God. The will of the people is the voice of God. Simply meaning that if you can get enough people in your city to believe, if you could get 90% of the people in your city to believe something and want something, that's like the voice of God. The government over that city or that town or that country or that state is going to acquiesce. They're going to give you what you want. You get that many people in the street demanding something, and well, the voice of the people is the will of God. So this is how religions get to be so powerful. That it's easy to get people to believe things, and once they believe, and then they raise their children to believe it, and their children raise their children to believe it, until today you've got 7.5 billion people around the world who've got all kinds of religious beliefs depending on their country and their point of origin. And now we got a whole new powerful running of the world from behind the scenes.
I think, doesn't a lot of it tie into human psychology? Because we react on emotions rather than critical thinking, and we defend those systems that perceptually protect us physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's like a form of universal Stockholm syndrome.
No, that's exactly what it is. You're exactly correct. Who was it? Napoleon said, history are lies that we have all agreed upon.
It's his story.
And so that's what our history is. It's all kinds of misunderstandings and outright lies and deception. And history is written by the victors, so that you have to question everything, question what you believe, question your own country. And if you're smart, you question your own sanity and do research and study and get a better hold on and understand words and terms and ideas and where they've come from, and then begin to see how you have been influenced by them without knowing it. And you've been, sucked into a belief system and never realized it's just a belief system. It has no basis in fact at all.
Jordan,
so, yeah.
This is Jack. Hi.
Hi, Jack.
Hi. Great talking to you as always. Do you believe there is such a thing as absolute truth? When you look back at all the history you've studied, how do we know that that history hasn't been tainted or doctored up?
Well, of course, that's a very, very good question. And logic alone would tell me there must be an absolute truth, logically, because whatever happened, it happened. And therefore, if you want to talk about it, well, that's you talking about it. But that's if you weren't there, how would you know anyway? And so, yeah, you have to question everything. But whatever actually happened. So there must be an absolute truth. But your question is, would we ever be able to know what is the real truth concerning anything?
We all perceive it differently.
That's a very good question.
We perceive it differently, even if we were there and witnessed it. All three of us, Jordan, Jack, myself, if we watched something happen, it happened. That's an absolute, but we all might have witnessed it happen differently.
Yeah.
Perceived it
that's
differently.
Exactly
yes.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Ryan just did a show last weekend about how untruths are put in amongst, I call it a truth sandwich. And so it is very difficult to decipher the truth. And I don't even like to use the word truth. I prefer to say it's probably more truthful. But so much of what you are very knowledgeable about when it comes back to words and the true meaning of words and how these phrases are developed, I think that's a pretty good basis for deciphering the truth. When you look at the root meaning of the root words and what the real meaning is, that seems to really shed light on truth.
Well, yeah, because we know that so much was being done by the church in the Middle Ages in preparing our destiny as a language, as a people, as a culture of people on the earth. The church was in charge of the destiny of the human family in the Western world. Greece and Rome ruled Europe, and Europe during those years ruled the world. And then with the coming of the collapse of the Roman Empire, so much of the real history has been wiped out. And for the past 2,000 years, we're totally unaware of the ancient and prehistoric world that it's finally beginning to come out now, finally beginning to show itself and be in development of the knowledge about the ancient and prehistoric world, the extraterrestrial presence on the earth, the ancient astronaut ideas. All of this is really new, but I feel that there is something very legitimate about these subjects of ancient astronauts and ancient gods coming to this earth from somewhere out there. There's obviously something to all of this, and it's very slowly and surely beginning to show itself. And now there's some really great people out there who have done some tremendous research material work on the real history of the human race, and especially what's going on with us today. Two names come to my mind immediately, and that is Joseph Farrell, spelled Farrell, Joseph Farrell, and Peter Levenda, Levenda. Peter Levenda, Joseph Farrell are two of the best minds out there today, in my opinion. I'm fascinated to listen to them talking about world events today and how they have been impacted by the ancient and prehistoric world of mankind. So a lot of good material is starting to come out now, and people are waking up to the fact that the world as you know it today is not the same as it was thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago, or even in our case, 20 years ago.
This can be very dangerous too, though, Jordan, because instead of having information restricted, it's almost as if information has been entirely dumped. So now things have become more convoluted, and although we have access, as essentially we always have, we have access to more accurate information rather than using the word truth, sometimes researchers and people that have big egos and big personalities and are really good at marketing can exploit people's genuineness, curiosity, and naivety in a subject such as ancient aliens to make a bunch of profit and spread disinformation just because they can create a really good story.
Well, I totally agree, and that's overwhelmingly true and obvious. That's part of the human predicament that we humans like to be in the company of and listen to what we perceive to be as important people. But
how do we
looking at
combat
it from
that?
my viewpoint, from being in this field of research for 58 years, I have a feeling about people now that I didn't have as I was growing up, and that 77 years old today, and knowing what I have done and who I am and my imperfections, even though I'm accepted and called an authority on things, I know I'm not an authority at all, but I am perceiving things over the many, many years to be true. And so I know that there are some people out there, and I named two of them, which I consider to be very legitimately important, important people doing great work. But you're right. There's an awful lot of people out there that they're good at talking, and they sound good, and then you'll find out later on that they were just selling their own ideas and marketing their own ideas. But that's part of life. You have to allow people to be free to talk, and then you have to decide for yourself what is true and what's good and what isn't.
I think that's key, Jordan, is making the decision yourself, taking responsibility, and not relying on other people to be the authority on something.
Oh no, you're right. There's no doubt about that. You are right. You need to go into your own spiritual presence of your own self, and you will. You'll have a gut feeling about, and gut, G-U-T, is simply God in the Scandinavian tongue. So you get a gut feeling about something you're hearing, whether it's right or wrong, or whether it's good or bad, whatever. Some people say they get a vibe off of other people. They get good vibes or bad vibes or gut feelings. But I think like the Bible says in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul said, God's Spirit bears witness with your spirit that something is true or not. I'll say that again. God's Spirit bears witness with your spirit that something is true or not. The idea being is that you will get a gut feeling within your spirit, whether something is true or whether it's interesting but not true. But you get your own gut feeling about something you hear. And I'm the same way. And over the years, I've heard so many stories, but I do have a gut feeling about some things which I believe to be true. And the one thing that I really know to be true is that there's so much more to us humans in the history of the human race than what we have been able to be told and what we have been given to understand. That there's a whole world of hidden knowledge that goes back tens of thousands of years to ancient civilizations that have been on this earth that we know nothing about today. And so I just got a gut feeling about certain people. As I said, Peter Levenda and Joseph Farrell are the two top ones in my book that are really giving us important, good information on which to begin to do our own research. It's not very smart to just rely on one person, period, because now you're a disciple. Now you're following a discipline of someone else's. but it is encouraging and good to have certain good, legitimate sources of information that gives you an opportunity to start thinking about it yourself. And because we all learn from each other.
And for those that are self-aware and pay attention to their intuitions or their gut feelings, I like the term inner knowing. I think a lot of discerning truth comes to me when something just makes sense.
Yep. That's exactly what I'm basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. If it doesn't make sense, then it's probably not true or as truthful as what we would like to know. Truthful as it could be.
Yes. Let's pause for a moment. Jordan, give out your websites.
It's Jordan Maxwell Show, SHOW. Very important to add that on. Jordan is like the Jordan River, JORDAN, Jordan. Maxwell is MAXWELL, Show, SHOW. So my website, jordanmaxwellshow.com.
And the other one is the Research Society, correct?
Well, the Research Society, you get that on the Jordan Maxwell Show. Just go on Jordan Maxwell Show, and there's a link for the Research Society right on the home page.
All right, JordanMaxwellShow.com.
Have you been working on...
Say it again?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just wondering if you've been working on any new projects lately.
Yeah, I have, and they're so controversial, I don't know what to do with them.
You can talk about them right here.
I've got a couple of subjects that I have been working on pretty much all my life, back and forth, coming back and forth to the subject. But I have come now to a point where I have a couple of subjects which are so controversial that I don't know how to bring them out and how to present it to the world. But I know that I am onto something very, very big.
Can you give us a taste here on the Secret Teachings?
Well, it would fit better on Secret Teachings than it would anywhere else, because that's exactly what I'm talking about, is that there is a secret teaching that's been around for thousands and thousands of years, and it's so overwhelmingly obvious today everywhere on the earth. Its presence is being felt, but we're seeing the forest, but you're not seeing the trees. We're looking at it, we're seeing it, but the scripture, the Bible even talks about the fact that there are people who have eyes but don't see. They have ears, but they're not listening. And with their heart, they don't get the sense of it. And so that's what I see now. After all of these years, I stumbled upon a subject back in 1967, which today is exactly 50 years ago. And I was in Glendale, California, at a Glendale library. And I stumbled upon a subject in that library that I knew instantly that was going to be very, very important. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it was, but my gut told me that this is going to be the most important thing you're ever going to find. And so I started doing research on the subject. And over the past 50 years, it has dominated all of my thinking. This one subject and one symbol, as it was used in the prehistoric and ancient world, as it's being used today in this world, and it ties into the world religions, world government, philosophies of the ancient world, and the New World Order especially. It's the kind of thing that you'd have to sit and look at for many, many years before it would finally dawn on you what you're seeing and what is so well hidden. And that's the only reason why now I am finally beginning to see something that I've been looking at, for 50 years. but never realized the implications of what I was seeing until now. And now it's so controversial and kind of frightening to even contemplate what it really means and where we as humans are going. If I could explain the symbol to you, and it would take a couple of hours just to do that, at least 2 hours, and you would have to see, not just hear. It's not good enough to hear me discuss it. You'd have to see it with your own eyes. And then the best I could do is help guide your thinking about what you're seeing and explaining what I found important about it. And then after presenting for 2 hours this idea that I have developed over the past 50 years, then you look at it and you tell me what you think. And believe me, there's a lot of information about the thing I'm talking about. But it's not going to be of any value for me to talk about it now because you really have to see it. And so I'm putting together a presentation on that subject. I've got one video out there now which at least talks about the subject. It is very brief and nowhere near as complete as it should be. And it's brand new.
Is there anything alluding to intelligences, artificial or organic, that are not of this world?
Yes. Yeah, it definitely deals with that. It definitely deals with something that is not of this world, that has been around for tens of thousands of years and has used the same symbol. And that symbol today, we see everywhere you look, you see, but you don't see. You look with your eyes, but you don't see. Meaning, you look with your normal eyes and you see it. But with your spiritual understanding eyes, you don't recognize it.
Would that be the third eye that you're referring to?
Well, not necessarily the third eye. I'm talking about the spiritual eyes. Meaning, if you're educated in a particular philosophy or educated in a particular symbol and a particular field of research, things pop out at you quicker than it would just anyone else.
Yes, they do.
And so,
well, Jordan, can I suggest I've been doing this for just now going on 8 years. The radio. I've been doing research a little bit longer, pretty much since I'm right out of high school. I've noticed something as well, something I have talked about. I've done it here. I've done it on Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis and some other radio shows. And I see this because I studied films. I went to film school. I studied TV shows. I've studied psychology, symbolism, philosophy, the secret teachings, the secret doctrine, the occult, and so much more exterior to that and internally to that, and everything in between. And I've started to think, be it artificial intelligence, be it some form of organic life, some type of synthetic life off of this planet, out of this dimension, that something has come through. We see this in government experiments like the Philadelphia Project, Montauk. We've seen this demonstrated to the public in TV shows like Stranger Things, Monsters Incorporated, the Disney movie. I've even interviewed Harold Kautz from Germany. He talked about black goo and remote viewing, and when they remote viewed the Morgellons in the body, Morgellons looks basically like a parasite that feeds off of DNA and consumes light. My suggestion, from what I've figured out, or at least what I think I figured out, is that there is something that is, you can call it whatever you like, extra-dimensional, extraterrestrial. There's something that's not from this world, from another dimension. It acts as a parasite. It attaches to our, perhaps, light bodies, if that's the appropriate way to describe it. It attaches to us in some way. It sucks the life, it sucks the light out of us, and it exists just below the surface of what you're suggesting about this symbol, where it's right in front of us, but we don't see it. I don't know if that relates to what you found, but that's what I found independently of hearing what you just said.
No, I am totally agree with that. Totally agree that it is not of this world, not of our dimensions that we are used to, but it is a symbol and a concept that goes back to ancient Egypt, all the way back to the very beginnings of ancient Egypt, and
just to
and
Egypt or before, just to Egypt or before Egypt as well.
Yeah, oh yes, it obviously existed way before Egypt, but Egypt, what you might say, Egypt perfected the symbolism and gave it to us, and there are people in the world which we call the Cabal or the Illuminati. They pretty much understand that ancient symbol, not like us today. We don't really get it yet. But there are these people in the world who do know what it actually meant and how it is to be applied. And so that's the scary part, because I know it's a very powerful symbol. It really is very powerful in what it is able to do in guiding the human race. So yeah, you're right that there is something going on that is not of this world. Um, I would like to be able to do a 2 hour documentary, but I'm going to wait until I have somebody, some company, or someone who can put up the money and do it right. Because I feel that when I begin to unveil this thing that I'm talking about, that I have seen, it's going to be monstrous in importance. And I'm foolish enough to believe that I've got something like that, that's really going to be important, because you can trace it back through history and showing that there has been an other world or off world or extraterrestrial presence over us. And I tend to use the word overshadow. I think that this high intelligence is overshadowing us, we humans, and causing us to buy into certain concepts and ideas as humans, only to discover that when you begin to see something after 58 years of looking at it, then it begins to become apparent something far, far smarter than we are has put together a symbolic ideas and concepts on how to control and guide the destiny of this creation we call the human world we live in. Something far, far deeper is going on, and now we're beginning to feel it, on the surface. Now people are starting to wake up and feel that there's, technologies going on that we're not aware of, and there are people doing things to us, and weather manipulation and poisons in the sky and all kinds of things which are happening to us, the human family, and we have no control over it. Well, the reason why is because you have no idea in the world what is actually the reasons for things happening, the agenda that's being worked out. It's very, very ancient. It's very old. And so the most ludicrous thing you could come up with is that modern day man is the epitome of all the wonderful qualities of humans. We are the ultimate of all ultimate creations in the universe. All of our ancestors were cavemen and knuckle dragging cavemen, and we are finally a brilliant people of the world. In point of fact, nothing could be further from the truth. The most ancient peoples on this planet were far superior to us in anything that we could do. Our best minds have not even begun to figure out what was going on this earth millions of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago. There's a history to the earth that we have not been privy to know about.
I think that's part of the reason that we degrade the past, whether the past is yesterday in terms of technology or 1,000 years ago, because we don't understand it, so they must be barbaric.
Yep. And obviously, it's overwhelmingly obvious that we are superior. We have television. We have lasers. We have
Apple technology. We have iPads, Jordan.
Hey, we have Chia Pets. Come on.
Yeah.
Hey, Jordan, before you move on, you had mentioned the video where you touched on this subject a little bit. Can you tell us the name of that video and where folks can find that video?
Yes.
Yeah, it's called Cosmocratorus. It's based on a Greek word the Greek word Cosmocratorus. But I just call it Cosmocrats. Cosmocrat is the name of the video. And you can get it off of my website. You just go on Jordan Maxwell Show, and there it is on the right-hand side of the screen. You could order it right now. It's there. It's been there for a long time. Just click on it and order it. It's called Cosmocrats. And the other one, I got 2 new videos, and the other one is called Unveiling an Ancient Mystery, I think that's what it is, Unveiling an Ancient Mystery. And so the Cosmocrats deals with this symbol and this concept very lightly, but at least it deals with it. It's like a little introduction.
So it's opening the doorway to the subject.
Yeah, it's opening the door to something far, far bigger. And so, but I had to start somewhere, so I have to assume to start with people on the earth who have no knowledge of this symbol at all and have no idea in the world what it really means. So I have to go back and start all over again at that level and introduce the idea. But boy, there's a far bigger story once you see Cosmocrats. There's a far bigger story coming.
So that's Cosmocrats. That's on the website, jordanmaxwellshow.com. Jordan's information is linked up on our website as well at www.thesecretteachings.info. We're going to take just a short break to give everybody time to use the restroom, grab a snack, grab a drink, and come back just a few minutes. And when we return, we are going to continue our conversation with Jordan until the end of the broadcast. We have a whole bunch of other subjects, almost an infinite number of topics we could discuss with Jordan Maxwell. Again, jordanmaxwellshow.com, our website, www.thesecretteachings.info. My email, rdgable@yahoo.com. And I won't harp about it, but if you would like to call in, it's 1208-650-4160. That's 1208-650-4160. Stay muted and have your question ready for Jordan Maxwell. The Secret Teachings radio show is oriented towards bringing back virtue, logic, common sense, and reason to our understanding of subjects from symbolism and the paranormal to health and philosophy for self-improvement. There is no sensationalism on this broadcast, and we have been removed from 2 radio networks, including Art Bell's Dark Matter, for refusing to censor our content. If you obtain something of substance from this show, we ask you to support us in one of the following ways by visiting our website, www.thesecretteachings.info. You may purchase one of my many books, which are available around the world. Reviews of those books are found for reading on the website. You may donate directly to support what we do, or you may subscribe monthly or yearly to our show archive. Each subscription allows you to stream and download every episode of the show, and all subscribers get access to an exclusive after show, which airs after the live broadcast ends. So no matter if you can or cannot listen live, subscribers have access to every interview and every analysis, with timeless subjects and great guests. If you have questions, comments, or cannot afford a subscription, feel free to email me directly at rdgable@yahoo.com. I grow every week alongside of each one of you. Please visit our website and support what we do at www.thesecretteachings.info. Namaste.
Would you like more secret teachings? You can find Ryan on YouTube by searching for the name, or the Twitter handle @TSTeachings. The main social media page is at facebook.com/The Secret Teachings. There you can like the show, send Ryan messages, and share content. Ryan's website also has links to these pages and additional ways to listen to live or rebroadcast shows, as well as subscribe to the archive for a month or 12 months. If you'd like, you can also email Ryan directly at rdgable@yahoo.com.
I've been a researcher, analyst, and radio host for more than 6 years, constantly experiencing the transformation that comes about by refining oneself. Through my immersion in the world of symbolism, history, technology, comparative religion, health, and philosophy, and my interviews with doctors, authors, psychics, and more, I have compiled several books with a combined analysis of these subjects from an objective point of view. If you enjoy my radio show, The Secret Teachings, you will love these books, each one different but also weaving together hundreds of subjects exposing topics that few will talk about, from taking responsibility for your health or understanding the allegories in religious teachings or history, to the paranormal, massive child trafficking networks, and even the ancient traditions of magic and alchemy. These books will help you break the great evils and boundaries of ignorance, superstition, and fear by providing information for personal transformation. Titled The Grand Illusion, False Prophets, The Persistent Illusion, The Technological Elixir, and Food Philosophy, these books are available anywhere around the world, including Amazon and Barnes & Noble. To read reviews by researchers, journalists, and other authors, and to see videos directly through the publisher, visit NeelyProductionsInc.com, that's Neely Productionsinc.com, or visit my website at www.thesecretteachings.info.
Thank you, Ryan. And by the way, everyone listening, I would encourage you to go get a copy of Ryan's book, The Persistent Illusion. Okay? It's lengthy, but it's got all the ammunition you need to start figuring out what's really going on in the world. This is Joe Mars, and you're listening to The Secret Teachings.
This is David Icke from davidicke.com, author of The Phantom Self and The Perception Deception, and you are listening to The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable.
This is John B. Wells of Caravan to Midnight, which you can find at caravantomidnight.com, and you're listening to The Secret Teachings.
I'm Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero Radio, and you're listening to The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable.
Jordan Maxwell, our guest this evening on The Secret Teachings, jordanmaxwellshow.com. On our website, you can find our archive. You can subscribe to become a member. You get access to the entire show archive with exclusive after shows only available to subscribers. You can download and stream those shows anytime you'd like. Also, top news, all of my books, The Grand Illusion, The Persistent Illusion, The Technological Elixir, and my newest book, Food Philosophy, all of those are on the website. We also have a store now with T-shirts and mugs with the official The Secret Teachings logo designed by Allie Hartley. You can see some of her art on the website as well. AllieHartley.com is her website. My email is rdgable@yahoo.com. That's rdgable at yahoo.com. I'm joined today not only by Jordan Maxwell, but my good friend and co-host Jack, and his website is messengerof.info. Now, with Jordan on the show, the conversation could go in any direction at a moment's notice because all of the subjects we discuss, whether it's symbolism and religion to social perversity, connect to one another. There are a lot of questions that I'm sure you would like to ask Jordan. There are a lot of questions that Jack would like to ask, a lot of questions that I would like to ask. We started out the first hour just seeing where the conversation flowed, and it took us to some very interesting places. Now, Jordan, I don't know if you already mentioned it, but when I talked to you a few months ago, we were trying to set up a show, and you said you had some really scary stuff to talk about. We were going to do a Halloween show. Did you mention any of that scary stuff, or is that something that you could talk about now?
Well, what I was talking about is precisely what I just got to talking about. That's what I meant.
I was thinking that, yes.
Yeah, and it is scary. It's very scary when you finally begin to perceive the way I think to describe it is many, many years ago, photographers, when professional photographers, they would take a picture and then they would have to go into a dark room and they have a red light in the dark room, and they would have these different chemicals in trays, and they would put the film into the tray with a certain chemical, and slowly but surely the picture would begin to develop, and then they would take it out and hang it up and watch the picture slowly but surely come to be and begin to develop. And then later on, give it a few minutes, and then finally the picture is fully developed, and now you can see everything. Well, that's what I'm talking about in relation to this research I've been doing on this controversial subject. Because for me, it was not clear at all back in 1967 when I first confronted this subject. But I realized with an immediacy that it will be the most important subject I will ever deal with in my life, eventually, when I figure it out what it is I'm looking at. And as it turns out, that's exactly what happened. That I have finally begun to put this together after so many years, 50 years of looking at this. And it is the basis for what I see going on the earth today. It touches very heavily on what we call Luciferianism. That is a term that's been used quite a bit. Most people, have different ideas about what Luciferianism is.
Sure.
But the subject I'm talking about deals with Luciferianism in a totally different way than anything you've even thought about.
A different perspective, a different way to look at it.
Totally different perspective, completely.
Well,
Jordan,
yes.
You've told us before that pretty much the only way you can see this world ever changing significantly for the better is nothing short of divine intervention. So
Yes.
With this ancient symbol present, will this world, in your opinion, ever have a chance for a significant positive change?
No. Unless this symbol is fully understood, and the history of its philosophy and the ideas it represents are fully understood by the human family, I don't think we are able as humans to extricate ourselves or to escape from that which has been planned for us a long, long time ago.
Well, if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, because some people, maybe they're confused hearing about a symbol, but it's hard to explain. You have to see it. We go back to what we talked about in the first hour. we rely on doctors for health. We rely on religions for spiritual growth. We rely on ufologists to show us aliens. We rely on engineers and technology to extend our life and to make life more convenient. There's always somebody that we're told that we need to rely on. There's an authority figure. One of the things that we keep hearing about in the fields of research that you're involved in, Jordan, I don't know how much you hear about this, there's always somebody that has specific information. They've got it from a source. That source might be vetted, but they can never demonstrate how they know something. They can never really provide any proof. We hear about white hats. They're saviors in government. And even though they're trying to do things that are right, they're somehow doing it so that we can see it, but that so-called black hat, the cabal, isn't recognizing that there are people trying to undermine what they're doing. A lot of that just sounds like complete nonsense to me, and I think in relation to what Jack just suggested, and it's beautiful because we're all on the same page here, I was just thinking this, the real key is to not rely on other people for, at least other people for the absolutism in what you believe, to always do research, to always think critically, never to rely solely on emotion, to disconnect yourself from things when they just don't seem right, using that heart, using that gut, that intuition, and allowing yourself to move along with the ebb and flow of information, never restricting yourself in terms of belief. And that is how I think if we do need saving as mankind, that's how we save ourselves in a much more balanced way than relying on somebody or something else to do it for us.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. My feeling has been, and it's been developing over the years, but my feeling about our ability to get ourselves out of trouble and educate ourselves, I am totally convinced that if you are supposed to hear, if you are, knocking, it will be open. The scripture says, seek and you will find.
Ask and you shall receive.
And ask and you shall receive. So it's my opinion, but I think that if you are supposed to awaken and to enlighten yourself and to learn certain things that other people aren't, it will be given to you. The Spirit in the universe gives it to you. The way I explain that is that if you are, say, a young man and you are drafted into the military, and so now you're in the military, and the first thing you do is you are put on a bus and you're taken to a military base. And when you get off the bus at the base on the first official day in the military, you tell the officer in charge, I'm supposed, if I'm going to be in the military, I'm supposed to go to Washington, D.C. and work with the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Well, they're going to take you out behind the barn and teach you a lesson. And when they're through with you, you're going to understand you don't tell power where you're going to go and what you're going to do. Power tells you. And so that's the way I have viewed spirituality in the universe and for mankind. Mankind does not decide what it's going to do. It's the spirit in the universe that calls you. You don't call it. So the idea being, and using Christian language, you don't go to God. God comes to you. Meaning you don't decide in your mind that you want to know this and you want to know that and you're going to learn about this or that. I believe it's just the opposite. The Spirit is calling you.
The Spirit moves across the waters and the Spirit moves us.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. So I think if you're supposed to know something, you will. And you'll hear about it. If you're supposed to hear it, you will. And if somebody's listening to me, but they're not supposed to hear what I'm saying, they won't. They won't get it. They won't understand it. There's nothing to them, and they'll go on their way, never realizing that the Spirit didn't want you to hear it. So that's why you didn't hear it.
We're going to take. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but if you are caught, as I have been, and many others, if you're caught up in the idea, some sort of an idea that pops up into your life, where you realize the dark, sinister forces at work and the great spiritual truths in the universe that you've never known before, all of a sudden you are spiritually active to wake up and find out what's going on, so to speak. I think it's because you were called by the Spirit. It's not you decided to do that, but somebody wanted you to wake up. Somebody picked you out of a group to wake up. And so, you know.
That's what's happened to me. I can tell you that. That's exactly what's happened to me. And I think, Ryan, you'd probably say the same thing, wouldn't you?
I would agree, yes.
Well, you remember the story in the Bible, in the story of Jesus, when Jesus said to his apostles, this is a metaphor, but it makes the point. Jesus asked the apostle Peter, he said, people are saying different things about me. Some people say that I'm this, and some people say that I'm that. What do you say about me, Peter? What is your opinion of me? And Peter says, I see that you are the master teacher, you are the Lord, etc., etc. But then Jesus answered him, Peter, saying, flesh and blood has not given you this insight, but my Father in heaven has given you this insight. So the point I'm making is that if you begin to really see something for the first time, it's not because you're so brilliant and so bright. It's because someone is giving it to you. It's as if there's a higher power in the universe, a higher intelligence, and it sees you, and it equates what you are doing with your intelligence and your sincerity. And if you really want to know, and you're really asking, then somehow, some way, you will begin to wake up to the information you are looking for, and it is given to you.
You'll be led to things.
The Spirit is calling you. You're not calling God. God's calling you.
I've been led to things since day one in radio. I've always called it synchronicity, even before I knew anything about the way that people use that word and relate it directly to Jung. I've always thought that things are just, they're presented. And I've never prepared a radio show in 7 going on 8 years now. It just intuitively, it might happen the night before, it might happen a week before. It just comes.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
And with me, it was, I had always questioned things. And I was led to David Icke. And David Icke started my journey of just an incredible, it was like a track meet. All of this information just started coming at me from all different directions. Just meeting Ryan a couple of years ago, that had to be some type of synchronicity.
In some very synchronistic way. That was so interesting.
Yeah, and then, our path leads to getting the opportunity to talk with you, Jordan, so it's pretty interesting, and I think you're onto something there, because I've had that same feeling where information is brought to me in timely fashion for whatever reason.
That's right. And in a timely fashion. Little by little, you are guided. You're guided to where you're supposed to go, wherever the great divine presence in the universe that men have called God, whatever that is, whatever that divine intelligence in the universe is, it picks you. There's a big difference between a disciple and an apostle. A disciple is one who studies the work of another person and another person's discipline. And so, if you pick someone that you like and someone who's caught your attention, and you really start studying what he's doing or what he's saying, then you are a disciple, because you are disciplining your mind to follow his discipline. And so you are then referred to as a disciple. But the word apostle means something different in the Greek language. It simply means one who is called out. You're an apostle if you are one who is called out. The idea being, for instance, if you were standing on a field, a rapt attention in the military, and there's 200 of you standing in a rapt attention, and you're waiting for the general to come, and the general drives up, five-star general pulls up in his Jeep and gets out, everyone's standing at attention. And he walks around and just surveying and looking at everybody and surveying the situation. And then he points to you, points directly at you and says, "You come here and go over there and sit, and I will talk with you later." And then he points at you and says, "Come here." Now that act of the powers that be picking you, you are at that point, the Greek word is an apostle. So a disciple is one who picks the teacher. An apostle is the teacher picks you.
Jordan, we're going to pause for just a moment. We have a caller on the line, 501 area code. Can you tell us your first name and where you're calling from? You're on with Jordan Maxwell.
Hey, Ryan, it's Joe Roop.
Hey there,
from,
Joe.
Arkansas. Hey, Jordan and Jack. Mr. Maxwell, I highly respect your work. I know you're one of the people that was revealing this information way before it became popular on the web, I guess you could say. While I was waiting on the phone, I think my question got answered. But the intellectual part of learning all this is good and fun. But I think at some point, when you start applying symbolism, meditation, prayer, ritual into your life, there's a lot of scrutiny that comes back from the public when you talk about these things. They call you a black magician or a Luciferian or whatever. I've been called, you name it, I've been called it. And yet, these things have empowered my life, and they've empowered my soul and my consciousness and my love. And I even spoke to Lon Milo Duquette and asked him the same question because I was insecure about it. And he asked me, would you trade the consciousness that you have now for the consciousness that you had then? And I said, well, absolutely not. And yet, the world tends to make me feel like I'm an evil person because I practice certain prayers, meditations, and rituals, so to speak. I was just curious on what your opinion is into the world of the occult, or let's just say practicing magicians. Are they evil in your eyes, or is it pretty much the same thing you were saying before?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that I have heard the same idea expressed virtually daily, because I do radio shows almost every day, and I have heard so many people over the years tell me the same thing, that because I am involving myself in certain prayers and doing the kind of research and study I am doing, that I'm losing my friends, my family's broken up, or my wife left me, or my friends, and I've been fired from my job and whatever. I've heard this over and over and over again. So, but the very basis for the story in the Bible about Jesus, the New Testament story, is basically a metaphor, and it's called the greatest story ever told, because the story that the New Testament is telling you is the greatest story ever told. And that is this, that there's a war between light and darkness, between good and evil. And the scripture has Jesus saying, which is a metaphor, but there's a scripture that in the Bible where Jesus said, they asked him, some of his followers asked Jesus, why do you talk to us in parables? Why do you use parables to teach us? Why don't you just come out and say what you have to say instead of using mystical symbols and talking in strange mystical ways in parables? And he said, I speak in parables because there are people I don't want to get it. There are so many people in this world, I don't want them to know the truth. I don't want them to see what I'm doing. I don't want them to know. I don't want them around me. And so I speak in parables so that it's done in such a way that if the Spirit of the Father, if God the Father, the Spirit in the universe, wants you to understand what I'm saying, you will get it. But if it doesn't want you to understand, you won't get it. And so I speak in parables so that I don't tip you off to the real truth. I speak in parables so if you're supposed to learn and supposed to know, God will let you know. And if you're not supposed to know, you won't.
Would you also say
And
that
so
it's because these types of things are very powerful?
Yes. Well, so just keep in mind that if you have been called out, so to speak, that means that you have not chose a teacher. The teacher has chose you, and therefore you have been called out. Well, that happens in life all the time. There may be a lot of guys at work like you, but if you get picked to go up into the company, well, they weren't picked. Why? Well, because the boss decided he wanted you. He didn't want them. He wants them where they are, to stay where they are, and he sees something in you of real value, so he appoints you into a higher position. Well, that's the way the Spirit works in the world we live in. If you're supposed to know something, the Spirit will pick you. You don't have to know about it and decide you want to know. You will know. The Spirit will pick you, and you will begin to open up your eyes to see things you never saw before. And the more you open your eyes, the more you will begin to see, and it will totally change you. But you didn't change you. The Spirit changes you. So I'm saying this is for everyone to keep in mind. When you have been picked to spiritually evolve to another world of knowledge, to a deeper and darker world of understanding and spiritual knowledge, the people around you are not going to be very happy with you. I mean, that's what it says in the Bible. It says if you have been picked, the people that you used to run with are not going to like you. They're not going to associate with you. Your wife is not going to understand you. Your kids are not going to understand what you're talking about. And now you're going to wake up to what it's like to be spiritually awake and alive in a world that is totally dark and has no knowledge of anything spiritual at all, and therefore they think you are the fool. Well, here's another example. If you are a normal, regular human being with an average intelligence, and you go on a vacation to a foreign city, and in that city there's a large mental health or an insane asylum for the mentally handicapped, and you go to that place just for a visit. As you're walking through this mental asylum, all the people there know each other, and they're always arguing and yelling at each other, and there's all kinds of discord going on. But everybody who's arguing with each other, they all remember and know each other. And so they're all happy with the situation, arguing and yelling at each other, but they all know each other, and it's okay. But you don't fit in the picture at all. Nobody there likes you. Nobody there wants to talk to you because you don't fit anywhere. Nobody's ever seen you. They don't know who you are, and they don't like you, and that's it. So don't talk to them. They don't want to hear you. Well, that's the same thing that you're experiencing today. Once you start to wake up and the Spirit is calling you to wake up and become a different spirit, a different person, and beginning to learn things you never knew before, everybody else in this insane asylum that we live in is not going to like you. You don't look like us. You don't even talk like us. You don't think like us. So therefore, we don't like you. We don't want you around. So don't be surprised if, as Jesus said, what they have done to me, they will do to you. If they had listened to me, they would listen to you, but they didn't listen. And so, so that's all I can say is that's what's happening with you.
in your scenario about the general selecting one of the soldiers or the boss selecting one of the workers to be promoted, that would make sense too, because the others may have a sense of jealousy. And
that's exactly right.
Right after my so-called awakening back in 2009, I had a thought come to me when I was meditating, and it kind of ties in with everything you just talked about. The thought that came to me was this: everything I had ever learned would now have meaning.
Yeah, of course. Because why? Because you now have a deeper understanding.
Yeah, it all came together. I started understanding things on a different level, and my whole perspective on life changed.
Now, my point being, was that you, because you were so brilliant that you come up with that? Or did you get that through a spiritual meditation where the thought came to you?
Yes, the thought came to me.
Yeah. So you didn't develop it. It came to you.
Correct.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. It's somebody up higher, we call it God or the divine or whatever you want to call that great spirit in the universe that we know is there. It picked you. Why? Because it knew you. It can see your heart. It can see your mind. It can see your DNA. It can see you for who you really are, not who you think you are, and not who everybody else around you thinks you are, but the divine one, which we call God. It knows you, period. From before you were born, it knows your DNA. It knows what you are, what your proclivities are. It knows what your feelings and thinking is. And so, if it decides that it likes you, so to speak, it sees that you are worthy to be given more, and to those who have more will be given. So if it decides that you are eligible for a better life, then it will contact you. You don't contact it because you can't contact it.
And that thought did come to me, because when you just phrased it that way, I rephrased it when I read it back or said it to you. But the actual thought that came to me was, everything you have ever learned will now have meaning. It wasn't everything. I changed it when I said it the first time. Everything I ever learned. No. That's not the thought that came to me, which means to me that it came from another source.
That's right.
A higher self.
If it emphasized you, it wasn't you talking to yourself.
Jordan Maxwell is our guest this evening on The Secret Teachings. We only have a small segment left. We're getting to the very top of the hour here. Our website is www.thesecretteachings.info. Jordan's website, where you can also find his research society, is jordanmaxwellshow.com. Joseph, thank you for calling in. We're not going to take any more calls. I try not to do that too often because it takes up a lot of time. When we have a guest like Jordan, I want to give him as much time as possible. And one of the things I want to discuss with you, Jordan, we always tend to do this right at the end of the show, is we talk about Hollywood. And a lot has come out of Hollywood, a lot has come out of media and politics. We keep hearing about the abuse of women at the hands of these evil men. And of course, men do terrible things, women do terrible things, but it seems like as that has continued to be perpetuated, there is less and less attention being paid to the abuse of children, the pedophilia that also occurs in Hollywood and politics, etc., etc., etc. So on both of those subjects, and anything that connects and ties into it, which includes so many things, could you talk about that with us for a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think that these kind of problems are arising and taking over the world massively. Everywhere in the world, we're beginning to see the massive work of pedophilia, but especially sexual sexual deviance, and the sexual harassment, so to speak. I think all of this is part of some sort of a spiritual, just as we were talking before, about how the divine spirit can contact you in such a way as to awaken you, because it wants you to awaken. It doesn't go to your family. It doesn't go to your friends. It doesn't go to your uncle. It went to you. And you were the one that was receiving the spiritual insight and awakening your spirit to know something. I think the same thing is possible from the dark side. I think that the basic problems with all of this sexual stuff going on, along with all the other corruption going on, I attribute to the presence of a occult spirit that is now attacking the earth. It's always been here, but now it's speeding up because there seems to be a time involved here. Something's happening on a time schedule, and now it's really beginning to heat up out there with corruption, sexual perversion, and so I feel that all of this is being caused by a higher power, which Christians would say is the demons and the devil and Satan. I think that there is something to that. I don't know, I've never met anyone named Satan, but the idea, the very word Satan simply means, simply comes from two words, Satan, S-A-N-T-A-N. Satan was an opposer in court. In the Hebrew tradition, anyone who opposes you on anything you're doing,
the adversary,
and who is your mortal enemy, is a Satan. And so, but I do believe that there is some sort of a power in the universe that we call the devil and demons. There is some sort of a unseen presence which is sucking the whole human race down the toilet. And we're seeing the collapse of all kinds of people who are built on sand, people who have so-called religious beliefs, and now we're finding out they're falling to the same stuff that everybody else is. So I think it's a spiritual battle that's going on, and the humans who are not prepared and do not understand it are falling victim to it.
So the opposition, the adversary of Satan and other similar types of characters, it's like a concept, it's like a symbol, and people,
that's right.
People, other perhaps aliens, something can embody that concept, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this character, as we've painted in a church, is real.
That's precisely right. That's what I'm saying. It could be actual entities which are embodying that concept as enemies, as an enemy. Enemy to what? An enemy to you in your life, to corrupt you and ultimately to destroy your beautiful life you have.
Like vampires or parasites.
Your future.
It's like a vampire or a parasite. I mean, these are real things, but they're also concepts. I find it interesting that we find parasites in nature. We find vampiric entities in nature. We find the anglerfish in certain parts of the ocean that deceives with a false light, and then fish swim up to it and they get eaten. I don't think it's too bizarre to suggest that there isn't a form of false light perhaps after death, that there aren't parasites that are able to latch onto our DNA, onto light, onto our brains.
Oh, absolutely. And just keep in mind, too, remember that in the entertainment business and show business, there is something called a black light. And a lot of nightclubs use black lights to light up certain chemicals and colors in costumes or on the walls. It's called black light. And it's a light, but it lights up only certain colors, and you can't see it, but it causes certain colors to really become prominent. So it's a light, but you're not seeing it, but it's lighting up certain things that you are seeing.
And actually,
so there is a dark force.
A black light, if you think about it, because as a teenager, I had black light posters in my room with black lights. And what does it do? It makes the colors more vibrant, and you're kind of drawn to them, aren't you?
Like a bug zapper.
That's exactly right. That's what I'm talking about. And so it's there, it's legitimately there, but you're just seeing the effects of it. You're not seeing the light itself.
Correct.
And so if you didn't have those particular colors that are really shown up, if you don't have those colors there, then you would never know that there was a light on at all. It's only when you bring in certain colors that all of a sudden it becomes very vibrant.
And that could be considered false light. A black light could be considered a false light. This is kind of a side note, and I know we're running out of time, but you and I have talked about this before, Jordan. Do you see, and this is a topic that no one ever really talks about, I haven't heard it on any other radio shows or anything, but it's tattoos.
Yep.
And
I've been
to me,
about
there's
them.
something about tattoos and the craze, I'll call it a craze, because so many people have tattoos, and many of them are addicted to tattoos, supposedly.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've talked about that on other programs. I brought that subject up now about 4 or 5 times on other shows about tattoos. My pet theory about it is that it's a branding. A spirit world is tattooing you like we do cattle. We burn a brand mark into a cattle. Why? To show ownership.
Is it different if we understand what the symbol means?
I don't think so. I think that just the idea of branding, the spirit world is putting it into your mind to get branded. And so there must be something, I guess the word would be occult or hidden. There must be something hidden about a human that would burn into their body, some sort of a marking of some kind, pictures or ideas about different gods or whatever. There must be something the spirit world knows about us that is getting us to brand ourselves, and we're involved in something we don't understand.
Well, let me ask you this, because I don't have any tattoos. I don't think I'd ever get a tattoo. Just that doesn't interest me. But around
Nor
here,
do I.
and I know Jack. Well, Jack, you're covered in tattoos. I don't know what you're talking about. But my whole radio
Graffiti.
studio, yeah, he's just graffiti. He's been tagged. My whole radio studio, I surround myself in symbols, things that are almost drawing me to them, as we discussed earlier. So could you explain maybe how that's different than perhaps someone who's drawn to those symbols and wants to tattoo it on their body, or is it just the act of defiling the body, perhaps?
I think, again, it has to do with spirit. And when I'm talking about spirit, I'm talking about Elohim, not El for God, but Elohim, the gods. I believe that there is on this earth today, it's my belief, that there are extraterrestrial life forms that are not, they're not from here, but they've either come here or they have been here for millions of years and they're still here, and we're the newcomers. But whatever the story is, there is a presence on the earth of intelligent creatures that we don't know are here. And they have the ability to manipulate our electrical circuitry in our brain, and your mind. Your brain is a computer, and your body is a bioelectrical unit, which feeds the computer. And so, since we are a computer and we do have abilities to read other people's minds, certain people can do that, there must be some kind of a way that the spirit world, the dark side, is playing with us. They're tagging us. They're playing with us like we do with little dogs and little animals. We play with them. And you can spray paint them or cut their hair a certain way or do whatever you want with them, because they're just little innocent animals. So I think that there's a spirit world that is playing with us. and they are marking on us like we do, and playing with other animals.
It's kind of like that with the clothes we wear, with the things that we participate in, holly or holy days that we don't understand the origins, don't understand the symbols, and yet we surround ourselves with them. We talked about that earlier. Is that perhaps a part of it too?
That's exactly right. That's what I'm talking about. Yep.
So it's not just tattoos. It's clothing. It's what we support, knowingly or unknowingly. I would just like one person who drinks Starbucks to come to me and explain to me what that symbol is, as opposed to just looking at it and saying, "No, it's just a woman with a crown on her head." Well, yeah, it is, but it has a lot deeper of a meaning than that.
Oh yeah, it sure does, boy.
And when you talked about this ancient symbol that's present, Jordan, and Ryan is pretty much an expert on symbolism, and we're surrounded by symbols every day that affect us unknowingly, unwittingly. So if there's this one significant symbol that you're referring to that's ancient, that's like an overriding, even more powerful symbol, that would just support the idea that, okay, that's why there's other, let's call them satanic symbols or other symbols around us on a daily basis that affect us subconsciously and we don't even realize it.
That's right. And I think that that Ryan would be the one person. I think that you would be the one person who would understand very quickly what I'm talking about. If you saw the symbol and you hear me discuss what I think it is and what I see it to be, I think you would be able to pick up on it very quick, because I perceive that you have done a lot of legitimate and de jure and real research into these subjects. It's not just a fancy of yours, but something that you're sincerely interested in and see the significance of it. And so I think that you would really like to, see this presentation I have done, keeping in mind that it's only part one of maybe a 10-part story, far bigger yet, but at least it's an introduction to the symbol. And then that's on my website. It's called Cosmocrats. And the other video with it is actually accompanying it. It's pretty much an accompanying video. You really should see both. The Unveiling of an Ancient Mystery and Cosmocrats. They're both talking about the same symbol in different ways.
Is this a DVD or something that
ancient history, and the one shows you the way it's used today?
Is this a DVD or something that I can stream? Can listeners stream this? How does this work?
Yeah, it's a DVD. You can order it off of my website.
Okay.
It's on my website, Jordan Maxwell Show, and right on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see my 2 new videos.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, Jordan, and I absolutely have dedicated every element of my life to this, and it has, as you explained to Joseph, it's blown away friends, it's blown away family, but it's also attracted those other people who are more awoken to the way things really are.
That's right. That's why Jesus said, if they had, the slave is no greater than the master. What they have done to me, they will do to you.
We have about 8 minutes left, Jordan. I want to give you the floor. I know you're going to stay with me for just a few minutes afterwards to talk, just a few minutes, but we've got less than 10 minutes now, about 8, I'd say, before we wind down. You've got the floor. Where would you like to take us for a couple of minutes?
Well, I think this whole idea of Lucifer is very much a part of the symbol I'm talking about. So, we can look at that just for a few moments and understand that will be a part of what I'm talking about in this new video, Luciferianism, because I am of the opinion that Luciferianism is something that most people, they're beginning to suspect is important, but they really don't understand where it comes from and what we're talking about and what's being, what it all really means when you talk about Lucifer or Luciferianism, because it's a very big subject. And I think there is legitimacy to the idea that Luciferianism is important. But I don't think the world has really understood what Lucifer represents, what it really means, and where it came from, and how it's come down to us today in a very ancient symbol that dominates the world. So that's a big subject we could talk about another time too, is Lucifer. But what Christians talk about Lucifer as if it was the devil. But actually, upon researching the word and going back to the encyclopedias and the etymology dictionaries, you will find that Lucifer has nothing whatsoever to do with the idea of the devil. Even the Bible dictionaries and encyclopedias, which I have tons of material like that I've copied, all of these biblical references say Lucifer has nothing whatsoever to do with the devil. That was a misconception that was promoted by monks during the Middle Ages because they misunderstood a Hebrew word, Helio. They misunderstood the word of Lucifer. They didn't understand the correct term. And so some of that got all mixed up and now is totally misunderstood and misrepresented today. Lucifer is not the devil. In actual point of fact, if you want to go into the Bible, you will find that in the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible, in Revelation, in the last chapter of the last book of the Bible, it very easily and very succinctly says, Jesus said, I am Lucifer. Therefore, the biblical understanding is that Lucifer is Jesus. So Christians think they're worshiping Jesus, they're worshiping Lucifer. Why? Because that's what it says in the Bible. Go to book of Revelation, the last book of the Bible, and go to the last chapter, and you will see where Jesus said, I am Lucifer. I am the bright morning star. Look up bright morning star, and it will tell you that means Lucifer. Lucifer's
the bearer of light. Jesus brings light, and Prometheus brings light, in fact, in the Greek mythology.
That's
right?
it. That's the point. And Jesus said, I am the light of the world.
And look at how Prometheus suffered for mankind, just like Jesus. He was tied by Zeus.
Jesus.
He had the bird eat his liver out of his side, just like Jesus was pierced in the side by the spear of the Roman soldier on the cross.
That's exactly correct. And therefore, Jesus is Lucifer. But Lucifer implies something even far bigger in the ancient world. And like you said, other mythologies have the same idea. And so don't be surprised if you start awakening to the spiritual world around you that most people do not even know exists. And if you start waking up to your spiritual life and your spiritual needs and start thinking in terms of other world knowledge and wisdom, you're going to lose a lot of friends, you're going to lose a lot of people, but you will be in that special group who has been called to know these things. So I don't feel I've missed anything. All the friends that have dropped me and left me because of my work, I don't care. I don't need them around me. I'm not about to lower my intellect and my spirituality so that I will have other people like me. I don't need them. I'm not interested in people liking me. I'm interested in truth. And so I know if you are interested in understanding the world you live in, then most people are in their beer drinking and their parties and television and partying. I don't care about losing friends. I want to know, and I don't mind paying for it. So just keep in mind, if you want to know the truth will set you free.
I sincerely agree. That's all that I'm concerned about, truth.
But first it'll piss you off.
And a lot of other people.
Second, you'll lose all your friends.
Because they're pissed off.
Yeah. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you will be in that small handful of people like Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein and Royal Rife and all the other great minds that stood by themselves as guiding lights for the human race. Thank God there are a handful of people who don't mind the ridicule and the persecution, but stand on their own by themselves for what they see and what they know. And
now,
so,
when you say, and we're just about out of time, but when you say special, I know that word for some people is going to trigger the ego, and they think, well, I want to be special, so I'm going to do this. It's just like the Spirit guiding you, moving on the water. You can't do this thinking that it's going to elevate you and make you superior to somebody else, I don't believe.
No,
that's not how it works.
No. And like I said, the Spirit picks you. You don't pick it.
Absolutely. It's like we live in a death culture. Things are perverted, the perversion of the secret teachings. We lack empowerment. We have any hero stripped away from us. We're pushed down, and the weight of the world, like the world on the back of Atlas, presses on us, and then there's somebody pressing on the world, making it even more difficult to stand up. If we focus...
That's exactly right.
I think, Jordan, we focus on intuition, we focus on the heart, we allow experience to take us organically where we need to be and whom we need to be taken to. And we do our own research, we connect the dots between seemingly complex, unconnected people, places, and events, then the world that seems so complex will actually begin to make sense. We've been resurrected from the tomb like Lazarus, like Jonah from the belly of the well,
That's
like
right.
Jesus.
That's exactly right. And so there's an old saying that Christians use, but it's true. Let go, let God. Implying, don't worry about what you're interested in, what you're going to do, what you know. Just let the Spirit guide you. Ask for guidance in a prayer form. Ask for guidance from the Spirit, and begin to accept spiritual guidance. And before you know it, you will wake up to a whole world you never knew even existed.
Jordan,
it's a spiritual knowledge.
Jordan Maxwell, our guest this evening, jordanmaxwellshow.com. You can also find his research society there as well. My good friend and co-host Jack joined us. Jack's website, messengerof.info. Our website here on The Secret Teachings, you can find links to both Jack and Jordan Maxwell and all of our other great guests and the timeless subjects we discuss and the artwork for The Secret Teachings store and everything else that you might want and need to know is at www.thesecretteachings.info. My email is rdgable@yahoo.com. That's rdgable@yahoo.com. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We'll talk to you off air just for a moment.
Okay, thank you.